Welcome back, everyone, to the Southy Show. I'm your host, Connor South, joined as always by my good friend DL. DL, how are you today?
Oh, I'm no bad. How are you? What's happening?
I'm not bad, it's not bad, mate, not bad. Today we're joined by Cammy. How's it going, Cammy?
I'm very well, Connor, thank you. Yeah, we're buzzing for my debut on the Southy Show. It's a true privilege, to be honest.
Oh
You
man,
would be.
we're buzzing to have you. We're buzzing to have you. Cammy joins us today because we're going to be talking about something that's very, very close to his heart, and that is Chelsea's run to the Champions League crown in the 2011-12 season. Cammy, are you not absolutely buzzing for this?
To be honest, I think, I relish in any opportunity to discuss that run. I think we talk about it in that season, 11-12. But it's, in my mind, the run goes on a lot longer than just that season. I think it had been building up for so many years. I personally put it all the way back to when our first season in the Champions League was in '99, but it was a few years we were in it, and then we were basically challenging for the actual cup for about 10 years, like at one point, in the kind of peak of Abramovich era, and there were so many moments for that, so much what could have been, so many heartbreak moments, and it just made it all the more special in 2012 when that did happen. So yeah, it was just to this day, 8 years on, more than 8 years even, like I still just love talking about it because I can honestly say it's the best thing that's ever happened to me in my life, and that's not just in terms of football. That's just with absolutely anything at all. So yeah,
this is going to be a better one for you, DL. I hope you're ready. I hope you're strapped in.
Aye, well, I've heard, having been friends with Cammy for a number of years now, I've heard all about Chelsea's run to the Champions League final, and obviously I watched it live as well, so I'm up to speed on it. Bava so one for me, considering that Arsenal have never won it, as I've been constantly reminded. But aye, yeah, I'm looking forward to getting into this, see what Cammy thinks of it.
Right, so let's jump in our time machines then. Let's jump in our time machines, go back to 2011, and a new man's at the helm at Stamford Bridge, and his name is Andre Villas-Boas. Cammy, what did you think of this when he was appointed as manager?
So I had mixed feelings, to be honest. He obviously joined, on the back of quite a successful couple of years for Chelsea. I mean, well, one more than the other under the leadership of Carlo Ancelotti. So Carlo was there for a couple of years, and in the first season, probably one of the best seasons in Chelsea's history. Probably the best up until the season we're going on to discuss, when we won the double.
Excellent that year.
One of the most underrated Premier League teams, I think there is, the amount of teams that we blew away. There were 4 games where we scored at least 7 goals, and I think that just kind of sums up the type of football that we'd experienced. Then the following season, 2010-11, it was a bit of a dip, to be honest. Like, we started the season absolutely flying. We battered a couple of teams 6-0. It was just going great. And then suddenly November came, and everything just kind of crashed and burned, to be honest. We got absolutely torn apart by Fernando Torres, who was soon to become a Chelsea player at that time.
Yeah.
Sunderland came to Stamford Bridge and battered us 3-0.
I remember that game.
Yeah, there was a few dodgy results at that time, and that the kind of mid-season, it was just very, very dodgy, and we ultimately ended up finishing a decent second position behind Sir Alex's Man United, which isn't really a shameful statement, to be honest, but I think given how well we'd done the season before, it was quite a disappointing turn of events, because I think, to be honest, I don't think anyone saw us getting stopped. I thought it looked like we were going to go on and really dominate. So when Villas-Boas, I was a bit sad to see Carlo Ancelotti go. He's always someone that's going to have a lot of respect for me. There's a few managers. Obviously, we've had quite a lot of managers in the last 17 years or so, but the thing is, like, there's some of them I hold in a lot higher regard than others, and I think Carlo Ancelotti is certainly right up there, to be honest, for what he achieved. And it's just like not just that Chelsea, it's just in the game as a whole. And I think it's 3 European Cups across.
Yeah,
couple at Milan, one at Madrid, and obviously for what he done with us. So yeah, and Villas-Boas, there was a lot of excitement around it because he was a very young manager. He was only 33. There was some members of the squad that were older than him, so it was quite weird. And I didn't actually know much about him at all, to be honest. Like there was obviously a lot of shades of Mourinho.
They were calling him Mini Mourinho in the press when he got appointed.
That's it, and I think there was a lot of kind of hype around that. People kind of thought, among the sort of Chelsea fan base, like, oh, we found the next Mourinho, blah blah blah. And to be honest, like I didn't really know too much about him. Like, I remember in the season before, Porto were obviously in they won the Europa League, and I remember watching some of their games that year. There was a few players that I really liked in that squad. You had Falcao, pretty sure he scored the winner in the final. They had Hulk, James Rodriguez.
Excellent.
It was a really exciting Porto team, that. So yeah, it was really, there was a lot to be optimistic about during that time. Try to get that back on board and win the league again. And and obviously push for the European Cup, which had kind of become the one kind of
the one
objective.
thing you hadn't done yet.
Yeah, pretty much. So, and it was clear from the start that his philosophy was very much on rebuilding this team, because it was at the stage where there was a lot of the shades of Mourinho still there, a lot of the old guard, and reality was, as hard as it was as a Chelsea fan to accept, they were all coming towards the tail end of their careers. It was so many great players who go down as Chelsea legends who were at it was the end of their time, and the reality is, like, there was a lot of stuff about how Chelsea are just playing the players are getting too old. They need to start trying to bring in youth a bit more. So that was the kind of idea that Villas-Boas had in mind, which was something that I was quite happy about. To get youth involved, because like obviously this season under Frank Lampard we've seen a lot of youth coming through, but until then there hadn't really been any, like, specifically from our youth team breakthrough since John Terry himself. So it was something like I thought Villas-Boas is really going to be quite promising that, like, to do. I try to think of some young players about, but then I remember young Josh McEachran. He was 17, 18. I had this weird thing. I just thought he was absolutely brilliant. Ironically, right, this is something that people struggle to believe. He was actually the player I got in the back of my top that season. So I've still got that kit, the Munich kit. I got Josh McEachran 46 in the back of that, because I said he's going to be the main man this season. He's going to.
People must have thought that was just your name, and you've just got like that in the back kit. The people must have just assumed that was you.
I remember that, like, going about for kickabouts wearing that kit. People were like, "Who the hell is that?" And it's like, and then they said, "Is that your second name? Why 46?" And I was like, "No." But then that season it just didn't work out, and as it kind of does always at Chelsea, young players go out on loan before
and you never see them again.
Been sold to like Vitas Arnhem for like 10p. So it wasn't. I didn't like to wear that shirt too many times after that. I wish I'd opted for Drogba in hindsight, but
that would have been iconic, having Drogba in the back yet.
That'll be a bit of a collector's item, but how many people will have a Josh McEachran Chelsea top realistically?
Try and sell in a few years for.
Well, our friend's got a Kundai Venue Celtic top, so I mean.
No, that's just him being a bloody idiot. But
what did you make of Villas-Boas? Because I always thought he spoke really well. Like, see, when he came in, I just thought this guy is like a really good breath of fresh air.
Well, obviously, I mean, people forget he went. I think he went in. If I'm right in saying he went invincible with Porto the season before in the Portuguese First Division. I believe he did anyway. So, I mean, obviously, great credentials: League and Cup double, League and Europa League double, even. So, coming into Chelsea, that's exactly the type of pedigree that they want. But I think it's no secret to say that the fans at Stamford Bridge have probably one of the highest levels of expectancy for their managers, because in the 10 or so sort of years prior to Villas-Boas coming to Chelsea, like, all they had enjoyed was success. So I think unless your time as a Chelsea manager is decided on your first season, I think unless you sort of hit the ground running the very first season, and obviously it's different with Lampard because he's the club's biggest legend, so he'll be given a degree more time. But if you're bringing in a guy from like a foreign league or something, then there's an expectancy for him to hit the ground running in the way that Antonio Conte did or Carlo Ancelotti did. So I mean, maybe they thought he was the man to do that, but obviously it didn't turn out that way, and he had quite a difficult time at Chelsea, and obviously fairly short-lived his reign. So maybe that did go to show that he just wasn't the right fit, and obviously moved on to Spurs the year after.
Aye.
That was a bit of a disaster
That was
as
a
well.
disaster as well. Probably doesn't want to see England again, that man.
No, definitely not. I think he manages out in China just now or something.
Yeah, I think so as well. Obviously, Chelsea that season they go into the Champions League. As always, Chelsea going into the Champions League are one of the teams, especially at that time, you think they've got a chance of doing well. Do you know what I mean? They're always, at that time, it was like them, Barcelona's, your Bayern Munich's, Manchester United's, everything. You thought they're one of those teams that should be there and thereabouts, like, should be one of the contenders anyway. And what did you make of their group when they were drawn into it? Do you think this was like, it was sort of one of those groups you were like, yeah, it's one they're going to probably bulldoze over.
Yeah, I mean, there was a few decent opponents in there. Like I think initially it was the kind of thought was right, we should get through, and then it will be either one of Bayer Leverkusen or Valencia. And I at that point I remember I used to always watch Spanish football. Like I just like every like Saturday and Sunday night after all the Premier League games had finished, like it was always on Sky Sports. I would always watch Spanish football, and Valencia were a team that I used to actually quite enjoy seeing. Back in the day, had quite a few decent players. So yeah, and I was quite cautious of them, but I did look at the group at the time and kind of think, yeah, we should get through. And I think it's always needs to be like that point. I remember it was always like one step at a time. Let's not get too ahead of ourselves. Let's just take it game by game. And yeah, eventually, like we've done all right in the group. I think we finished on like 11 points or something.
Yeah, I think one defeat. It was away at Leverkusen.
Aye, that was a tough one as well because like we lost 2-1. It was a last minute goal, and I mean like 94th minute goal. It was a header from a corner. After we went 1-0 in that game as well, I remember, and we had a couple of draws away to Genk and Valencia. So we didn't actually win any of the away games in the group. I remember the Valencia one as well was quite annoying. It was like a very late penalty. We were 1-0 up. Lampard scored early in the second half. It looked like they were going to see it out, but yeah, Salman Kalou decided he was going to punch the ball on the penalty spot, and it ended up being quite costly. Cost us a couple of points, but yeah, and it was actually Valencia we played on the very last game of the group. When we were quite worried about would we actually make out the group because it was still all to play for. We had to beat them, and then in the end he brought in Drogba. Basically instead of Torres, because at that point of the season Torres was getting favoured more often than not. We were still all at this point expecting the best from Torres. The massive signing from Liverpool, and obviously everyone knows what Torres could do, and how good he can be. It was just a case of like we just need to try and get that Torres, try and have him reborn basically, and just to find the form that he'd previously shown at Liverpool. But I think that's what Drogba done best. Like big games, when we needed the points. I just remember Drogba stepped up. He might have actually captained us that night. Don't take my word for that, but I remember he scored a goal within the first 5 minutes. Went 2-0 up, and then second half he scored the third just to seal it off. And he was just like, yeah, the big man. It's just. It should never have been in doubt when he was.
He is the best big game player I've ever seen. Drogba, like the best big game player. Like he was...
other than Messi and Ronaldo, yeah. So basically, the best big game human. I guess you could put it.
Yeah,
but yeah. So the groups, it was quite a nervy time. It was like there was a. I'd say it was comfortable in the end, but it was a couple. There was a lot of areas that needed improved. It was quite. The late kind of points dropped against Leverkusen away and Valencia, and then I don't really remember the Genk game that well, like what their goal was like, but it might have been a penalty. I'm not too sure. But I remember Ramirez scored to put us 1-0 up, and again we didn't see that out. So I think in all three of the away games we were winning, and then we ended up dropping points. So yeah, there was a lot, and I think that was typified with Villa's board. We just struggled to see games out, and I think that was a lot down to his poor team selection and just kind of not getting it right. But then again, the three home games were quite comfortable. We beat Leverkusen 2-0 in the opening game, which was, I say, like, it wasn't the most comfortable. I think we scored 2 relatively late goals. I remember David Luiz with a really nice finish in the group stages, and then Juan Mata scored in injury time, so it wasn't the most routine, but we got there in the end. Genk, we absolutely battered, to be honest. I think we played a slightly weaker team. I remember Torres got his chance and he stepped up really well. He's got a couple of goals. Really nearly got a hat trick, I think, as well. That was a really enjoyable game to watch. I remember a kind of 11-year-old Cammy was really optimistic that would be any time Torres done anything remotely positive, I was always thinking, oh, this is it. He's finally been unlocked. But no, I think clearly I was getting a bit too ahead of myself. But no, the groups were it was interesting. It was relieving more than anything to get through in that last game, and you kind of thought, right, well, that's us into the next round. Let's see what it brings. So yeah.
How long into Villas-Boas's reign, and this is a question for you, DL, as well. How long do you think it took for you kind of to think, right, this guy really isn't the man?
I'll start that one off if that's all right.
No bother, aye.
So it was within his first. We'll say right up until the rest of 2011, right? There was quite a few decent results. Now we weren't bad. I think we were out of the title race quite early, to be honest. I think that season Man United and Man City were clearly the ones that were going to be challenging for the title. And that's how we did pan out in the end. They also finished on the same amount of points. So I think in the Premier League front, it was just a case of it'd probably be the 3 kind of big London clubs competing to get the 2 of the top 3 spots. But there was just, and there was a lot of promise in those early months under Villas-Boas. There was a few good results, but also on top of that, there was a few shocking results. Like, I remember some notable ones. There was a 5-3 defeat to Arsenal at Stamford Bridge, which I'm sure DL would remember very fondly.
Oh yes, that was wonderful. That was marvellous.
We got battered off of Man United at Old Trafford, which I guess was expected, but it was the way we lost that game. We were 3-0 down at half time. It looked like they were going to get 5 or 6. And we missed. I remember that day we missed 2 absolute sitters, notably the Torres one, which everyone in their nan has seen, I'm sure. But also, he did actually score a very good goal that day, which no one talks about. But that's just Torres' Chelsea career in a nutshell for you. But it was. There was a lot of promise, but then it was at the turn of the year, and I don't have a list of a lot of the fixtures or the scores. And I think, to be honest, we always were up there in the race for the top 4, but there was just a few dodgy results, and it was mainly down to team selections. He would always try and play younger players over the more experienced players, and I think at times it kind of came to bite him in the arse a bit.
Yeah.
As I said, I don't actually remember any specific examples because it was so long ago that I don't really think too much about the league that season. But I remember it became increasingly apparent, that it just wasn't really working. I remember, for example, one that sort of sticks out to me actually was the 3-3 draw to Man United at Old Trafford. I'm pretty sure it was in the February of that year. So we were 3-0 up and we were absolutely smashing them, I remember that day I was absolutely buzzing. We went 3-0 up just early in the second half. Mata scored an absolute screamer. And it was looking absolutely brilliant because we thought, right, these are the champions, these are the team that we need to be beating here. And we did actually have quite a young team out that day. I remember, I don't think Drogba played. I don't think Lampard did either. I'm kind of guessing here. I can't really remember the exact team selection.
Yeah.
But I remember it was a younger team. We went 3-0 up, brilliant. And then the second half, Man United ended up pulling it back and making it 3 each. And it was just an example. We should never have lost that game.
No.
There's no chance we should have lost that. And I think that was a lot down to Villas-Boas' poor management choices at the time. In terms of team selections, that you might have wanted to bring on someone with a bit more of a cool head to try and see that game out. As I said, I don't exactly remember specific names, who was on the pitch, who was on the bench, but I just know there would have been you'd have been leaving out Cole, you'd have been leaving out Terry, Lampard potentially, Drogba, these kind of players that you just want to be on just to try and help see these games out. But that more experienced head, he always kind of went for the central defensive combination of Gary Cahill and David Luiz. who obviously, as the season went on, proved to be a very solid duo.
Yeah.
When we needed them to be. But, you know, I think sometimes you do just need JT in there to sort things out.
Yeah,
So,
just
yeah,
there's a bit of leadership.
that's it. So, yeah, that was the way I was kind of seeing it. There was a lot of promise at times, but ultimately there was just a few moments where you just kind of felt like his team selection specifically just kind of wasn't really of the level it should have been, and he didn't really seem to learn from mistakes. So that's the way I seen it. So I'll let DL get a chance now. I've been speaking for ages.
Yeah, I was going to say, for DL, for your point, for somebody like looking in who's not a fan of Chelsea, like, what did you make of him? Because I always thought he was a bit, like, he seemed a breath of fresh air when he first came in, and then as the weeks went on, I just thought, this guy really doesn't seem like he's comfortable at all.
Yeah, you know, I think in many ways, like when you look back before I came on the podcast, I was looking back at old sort of interviews with him, and like to make a sort of comparison to my own team at Arsenal, like he never sort of seemed at ease with the press, and it sort of it reminded me of like the relationship that Unai Emery had with the press. Obviously, Emery had massive problems with the language that weren't quite as badly encountered by Villas-Boas, but I just think he maybe found the level of kind of scrutiny that he came under from the English media. I found that quite tough. And obviously, I'm having a look at the results here, and you know, Chelsea lost 10 games in the league that season, which, you know, for a club like Chelsea, really it probably isn't good enough. So I think it was just a combination of factors. I don't think, because you can be you can be a great manager and you can come to one of these massive jobs in England, and really if you don't take to it straight away, then it can just swallow you whole. Because if you look at managers like Jose Mourinho, who's historically been an absolutely brilliant manager, most notably for Chelsea. In fact, he went to Man United, and you would think, you know, like, oh, this will be a perfect fit, you know. But sometimes it just doesn't work like that. You know, you can have the best credentials on paper, but it just might not be the right job, because it really can go one way or the other. And those big sort of top six jobs in England, you know, it's very temperamental. You know, if one thing goes wrong, it really can the wheels can properly come off. And I think that's what happened for AVP at Chelsea, unfortunately. Well, I say unfortunately, but probably.
I think, you know, there was I know it's a quite commonly discussed phrase these days, you know, the idea that he lost his dressing room. But I do really think, you know, like, given the main men at Chelsea at that point, where your Drogba's, Lampard's, Terry's, and you could just tell. Like, anytime I've seen him like mentioned around Lampard these days, and I've kind of spoken to some Chelsea fans who are, you know, in touch with Lampard, and I can guarantee you that Lampard just fucking despises the man for the way he's. I think he was probably the worst treated by Villas-Boas. You know, I think he was always the one that, if something wasn't working, he'd get subbed off. He wouldn't bring him on if he was on the bench, and he was on the bench quite a lot in the league that season. So I think, you know, and I think when you lose the trust of Frank Lampard, you know, that's going to automatically lose you the trust of John Terry, Didier Drogba, and, you know, obviously they're not the types of players that are going to kick up a fuss in the dressing room and get players going behind the manager's back and anything. But, you know, I just think the poor treatment of them basically brought that on himself, to be honest. Like, because these are the guys that, you know, they've been in and around the club for years, like between like 8 and sort of 10 years for the majority of them, and just to be flogging at the door in the way that they were, just treated like shit basically. It didn't really sit well with a lot of players in the dressing room at the time, as you'd imagine, and I think that just automatically caused everyone to just think, what's the point? What is this dick all about, basically? So yeah.
So the Champions League, back onto that. So the knockout stages come. Chelsea are drawn against Napoli. Now, people probably won't remember. We saw a lot of football fans remember this Napoli team at that time were one of the most exciting teams in Europe. They played such fast, like, so un-Italian style football, if you know what I mean. Like, and when Chelsea were drawn against them in the form they were in, I was thinking, right, this isn't going to go well for them. I could honestly see Napoli chewing this team apart.
Sorry, I was on mute there. So yeah, absolutely. I was really wary of that, because ultimately I thought, like, Napoli is, you know, we're Chelsea. We should go through. But I was extremely wary, and I began to watch a couple more of their games just in the build up to that like that first leg out in Naples. And what became increasingly apparent is that front three in particular. So it was Hamsik, Lavezzi, and Cavani. Those three scared me. They really did scare me, to be honest. I did not want to play against them. And I was like, and if we don't show up, we could have a massive, massive problem here. And I remember that on the night of that game, he didn't start Ashley Cole. He didn't start Frank Lampard. I think he started Drogba. He didn't start Terry. I think Terry might have actually been out injured or something. But there was just, you looked at that team sheet that night, and there just wasn't a lot of experience in the squad for a big game like this. And you just felt like certain players were just being extremely mistreated, to be honest. So yeah, it was, and given at this point, I was losing my faith in Villas-Boas, and as you say, Connor, like the strength of that Napoli team at the time, they were also like really exciting, and it was that front three in particular that just really scared me.
They were excellent, and obviously they proved it as well. They defeated Chelsea that night, 3-1.
Yeah, and it wasn't really a competition, to be honest. Like, it was just a bit of a shambolic performance. Got off to a decent enough start. Matas scored to put us 1-0 up from a defensive error, which is obviously really important, to get the away goal out there. So anything after that, you wouldn't think it would be too catastrophic, but it was just the nature of the performance from there on in. A goal from Lavezzi, to be fair, to check, he probably should have saved. Then a dodgy cross came in from the right. Cavani ended up sort of basically chesting it, and it was a weird finish that. But it was just like, it was Cahill and Louise were quite poor defensively that night. Ivanovic wasn't the best, and just and there wasn't really any leadership in front of them. It was Ramirez and Mireles who were playing in sort of holding midfield roles. I'm pretty sure, and it was just like, well, this is just. There was just no security at the back, really, and the third goal was a total shambles as well. It was just, it's actually hard to describe. If you've not seen it, to anyone listening, go and look at the third goal. It was just a defensive shambles. Basically, ended up Cahill and Louise were all over the place. Lavezzi just had an easy finish, just tapped it home, more or less. So yeah, it was a really unconvincing performance, but it was like that way. We're like, right, this guy's not going to be about much longer, and you kind of felt like he needs to go before the second leg. That was the.
Yeah.
Sorry, I go Connor.
I was just going to say, Andy. I was just going to say he wasn't there for the second leg.
And that was it. You just kind of saw. So I'm just actually looking at the team sheet just now. I'm realising I should probably, as I'm saying these facts, it'd be helpful if I actually got the team sheet up. So it started off with Singh at left back that night, which I don't actually remember that happening, but I think that just kind of shows how stupid some of the decisions were to leave out Ashley Cole on the bench. Probably Europe's best left back at that moment, just because he's getting a bit older, and to play Jose Masinga, who's a little bit younger. It's just a bit of a delusional choice. And then Ashley Cole actually came on for that, and I think it was the 12th minute according to this here. So I'm assuming Masinga got injured. I can't remember that specifically happening, but what I do remember happening is Ashley Cole making an amazing goaling clearance in that first leg, and that was it. If that goal was in, it's done. The full thing's out the window, and to this day we still wouldn't have that European Cup. But yeah, I think basically if Ashley Cole hadn't made that block, and that's when that kind of gave me personally a sort of glimmer of hope. I'm thinking, right, this isn't done. Get this clown Villas-Boas out. I don't care who we get in, but something is sorted, and we need to play our big names for the second leg. So yeah.
So the second leg obviously comes. Villas-Boas is gone, and Roberto Di Matteo has got the job. I mean, the story's now written, like in folklore, that he was the one that lifted the Champions League for Chelsea. It wasn't Mourinho, it wasn't Carlo Ancelotti and everything. But I have to say, like, I'd never thought I'd ever see a man who was looked more out of depth in a job in my entire life.
To be honest, yeah, at the time you're kind of thinking, right, Villas-Boas is someone. Villas-Boas. Di Matteo was someone really loved among the Chelsea kind of fan community. Like he was a massive player for us, a really important period of our career, of our Chelsea's history. In the sort of late 90s, early 2000s, scored the winner in several cup finals, and which is really instrumental to a brilliant team at the end of millennium. So yeah, Di Matteo was already someone that fans just absolutely adored, and even someone who like myself who didn't actually see him play, he's one of these players that by supporting the club you just kind of know that you have a lot of respect and time for. It's hard to describe, but that way you'll appreciate it from sort of like your own teams, Arsenal, Celtic, etc. Players that you might not have seen the best part of their careers, but you do just have a lot of time for what they've done, etc. So Di Matteo, he was always in and around the club. He was the assistant manager for the majority of that season. So yeah, to be honest, the fans were just quite excited about the idea of it. As you say, like he was maybe you didn't think he was a long-term solution. Like he was obviously appointed on an interim basis. But yeah, I think to be honest, we're all just like, right, it's only going to be a good thing. We're not going to win the European Cup this year. We're not probably going to win anything. Maybe sneak the FA Cup or whatever. But it was like, right, let's just see about this season, and we'll go again for next season. Hopefully, Mourinho will be looking for a new job. But that was the way it was at the time. But it was just like, right, someone that knows the club. What can go wrong here? So I think Diaz-Bo's last game was a 1-0 loss to West Brom, which came.
I remember that game so well. I don't know why it just sticks out in my memory of that game. It was on matches in the highlights of it.
Really late goal. I'm pretty sure like the 83rd minute, something like that. So yeah, it wasn't. That was it. That was the last straw, and I think he was sacked quite soon after that, and rightfully so. It just didn't work out as we established. In comes Di Matteo, a couple of decent results, not a lot of changes, but he does get, his team selection's a lot better, his rotation was working a bit more. And then, as you say, along comes the big game, second leg, Napoli, and, we had it all to do at that game.
I genuinely didn't think you were going to do it. I thought you was, and this was just like my thoughts at the time, I just thought after the 3-1 down to that Napoli team, I mean, Dio, I don't know if you were probably the same as me, thinking it when you were going to watch that game from the outside looking in, I was just thinking, right, they've got no chance.
Well, I would like to have thought that they had no chance, but I mean, soon after it started, there was just in general, if I had to sum up Di Matteo's reign at Chelsea, and I hate to use this word in relation to football because it's so cringy, but it seemed like there was a sort of like certain magic in the air, if you know what I mean. Like a club legend like taking the helm for the last sort of couple of months of the season and just seeing how it goes, and then obviously that Napoli turnaround at Stamford Bridge was just the start of an incredible run to the final. And I think the fact that they were able to overturn that deficit in London just showed that they would have the strength and guile to sort of to go on and like progress in the competition. I still think at that point, Cammy will probably admit this as well, that if you were to say then that in a couple of months you'd be winning the Champions League, you'd probably be written off as a bloody crazy person. But I mean, I think that what happened that night was an indication that something special could maybe be happening there.
And that's it. And you say the example, like you'd have to be crazy to think we could have gone on and won it. And I think, ironically, at that time, I was beginning to, consider how crazy I was, because I think it was maybe to do with my age at the time, how naive I was. I kind of thought, there is just so much hope. Like it was just everything to me at the time. Like just as a wee kid, just wanted to see. And I know how much like it meant, and I don't think that's ever like. I don't look back on that and kind of think, I wish I'd been a bit older for it, because at the time it was just everything to me. Remember, like the few seasons before, like I've always, the reason I support Chelsea is largely down to my brother Robbie. So he's been a Chelsea fan since 1996. So he's seen absolutely everything in the last 25 years. And I grew up like not really having like I say I grew up like my first my very young years as a kid, I didn't really have a football team. I used to like wear Celtic and Rangers kits around my house to annoy my dad. He's a Celtic fan. And I had this weird fascination with the Italian national team, largely because I had a player called Cammy, which I found quite interesting, just purely because of my name, just. So I never really had a team, but anytime Chelsea played, I always wanted Chelsea to win, just because of Robbie, my older brother. I've never lived with Robbie. He's 12 years older, so it was like I just kind of liked. I didn't really watch that many games with him, but when I did, I always wanted Chelsea to win. And then it was more so like I'd seen a lot of the pain he'd went through as I watched these Chelsea games, and I got it. You know, like I still love football, and I understand why it hurt him so much. And it was more so, it was the 2008-9 season when I began to find myself getting really attached to it. It was specifically the Liverpool game. I remember I wouldn't class myself. I like Chelsea because of Robbie, as I say, but I just wanted them to win games. And the Liverpool game, you'll remember the first leg, it was Ivanovic scored a couple. We beat them 2-1 at Anfield, and then the return leg was probably one of the most crazy games of football I've ever seen. The 4-4 game at Stamford Bridge. And that was when I knew, like, I just felt something that night. I don't know what it was. It was just this connection to the club. I don't know. I remember I spent the full time on the phone to my brother, just watching this game on a wee TV, and I was just so excited when we went through, and it was a weird feeling. And that's, as much as I've always sort of liked Chelsea, I think that's the kind of night I'd say I became a Chelsea supporter. And then to kind of think, I didn't really obviously understand the full concept of what the European Cup meant to Chelsea at that point, but then to see what happened in the following round, the Barcelona game, the less said about that, the better. But I think we all know what happened in that game. And then the following season, you know, when it was the double winning season under Carlo Ancelotti, we went out to Inter Milan, who also went on to win it. It was a brilliant team under Mourinho. And then the season after that, we went out to Man United, who I just absolutely despised this time because they just seemed to beat Chelsea to everything at that time. So yeah, I remember just after that, I remember I was down, actually, I was away with my family somewhere down south for the Man United game. It was, I can't even, it was like Scarborough or something like that. We were just in a wee sort of caravan. I remember we went out for dinner. I watched the Chelsea Man United game in a restaurant, and I remember we went 1-0 down. I started crying at the table, and then and that was only the first leg as well. And then after the game, I remember we were waiting for a taxi or something, and I just remember sitting bawling my eyes out, standing outside the restaurant. It just instantly, from a young age, meant everything to me. So I did.
Like that's some people who don't aren't into football would understand how into it you can get, like
the emotional side of things. It's just that's the thing, and that it was actually after that Man United game, my brother says to me, like, I can't do this anymore. We're never going to win the European Cup, and he'll literally admit to this day that he gave up on it. He just couldn't take it. Like, you know, it was like even when during that Napoli game, like, he was just like, he was obviously, you know, he couldn't help but be buzzing, but he was just kind of like, and so what? It's just queuing ourselves up to get for something worse to happen, you know. And yeah, it was just like the Napoli game was just so special because the thing that kind of sums it up that season as a whole, the players that scored the goals, Drogba, Terry, Lampard, and Ivanovic. So that, and therefore the players that were, you know, kind of something of a victim to Diaz-Boas' management. Yeah, so it was, you know, it was quite fitting that they were the ones that got the goals, and it was just a really, to use that word that DL said again, there was just such a high element of magic to it, and, you know, it's just there was a couple of moments you just kind of, as we said, that Napoli team was just so dangerous. They probably should have nipped a couple more goals than they actually did get. You know, Cavani missed a couple of sitters, and it's just when things like that happen, you just kind of get the feeling that something was happening there. So yeah, that was still one of my favourite ever Chelsea games. Even this far on, like that game should never be overlooked. How important it was that those two legs, even because they both were really, really crucial in their own ways.
The next round in the run obviously wasn't like as dramatic, but obviously any run to a trophy is important. But he's played a team he's become quite familiar with the season after in another European final, and that's Portuguese side Benfica. They're always a solid team, do you know what I mean? But they're a team you kind of felt like it's when you drew them, it was like sort of, right, this is a team they can beat and go through.
Yeah, to be honest, when we got Benfica, I was quite, to be honest, happy. I don't no disrespect to them because I knew it wasn't a formality, but I did think that's one we should definitely go through. However, the thing was, it was weird that year. Like, I think what happened was they done the draw for the quarters and the semis at the same time. So like we knew that if we were going through, we'd play the winner of whoever Barcelona played in the quarterfinals. I don't actually remember who it was. I think it might have been Leverkusen. No, because Leverkusen was the last 16 because Messi scored about 20 goals in the game.
Yeah.
I can't actually remember who it was in the quarterfinals, but it looked
It was,
like Barcelona.
it was AC Milan. They played in the quarterfinal because AC
Yeah.
Milan put us out in the round of 16.
There you go. Thanks, DL.
No bother.
So look at that. And Barcelona, European champions, the best team of all time. I remember Robbie saying to me, and I'll keep on mentioning Robbie because, like, you know, it's like a journey that me and him have kind of been on together. So yeah, and I was thinking, right, Benfica, brilliant. That's the team that we probably would want to get, a team that we should beat. And he was just kind of saying to me, like, I know, but what's the point? Then we need to go and play Barca, and you know how that's going to end up. And I was just like, I don't know. He's also been through a lot more with Chelsea than I have, but I was just clinging on to a lot of optimism still. And yeah, when the Benfica game came about, the away game, it was a tricky one. It was a weird game. There was a few kind of moments in it. There was, I remember Mata missed a really good chance. There was another goal line clearance. I think it was David Luiz playing his old club. And yeah, there was just, you kind of felt like watching that first. Watching that first leg, you kind of thought this isn't going to be as straightforward as I maybe have thought it would have been at the time. And then we ended up scoring a goal. I think it was like the 75th minute or something like that. Solomon Kalou.
Again, he's
Yep. It's someone who, you know, like I personally will admit I was quite harsh towards it during his time at Chelsea. I think he missed an amazing amount of sitters and had a couple of just bizarre moments. Like I remember, like obviously the handball we mentioned earlier in the Valencia game, which ultimately didn't really mean anything. But there was just a few sitters he missed. It's particularly one in the FA Cup final in 2010. He was just a bit of a dodgy player at times, but he stepped up and he scored the goal. It was all Torres who's doing that goal. Torres assisted it, and it was one of the better assists that I've seen, to be honest. Really good work on the right hand side, and a lovely wee ball across goal. Tripped it in and Kalou tapped it in. But it was like when we got that such a late goal in the game and we won that first like 1-0, that was when I thought, right, okay, that should be us home and dry. Still, again, don't take it too don't take it for granted too much, but we really should see them off at Stamford Bridge. Then, of course, the second leg came, and we got a relatively early penalty. Again, Ashley Cole won it, I'm pretty sure. Lampard dispatched it. Quite a common theme at that point. It's just, again, Lampard stepping up at the big stage. 2-0 up on aggregate with the away goal as well. Kind of thought, right, this should be us. And then that was further cemented, that thought, when they went down to 10 men around the half-time mark. We kind of thought, right, surely this is us in 2-0 up with the away goal, and we've got a man advantage as well. It wasn't until the last sort of 10 minutes when things really got shaky in that tie. They eventually equalised. Dodgy corner goal. There was quite a lot of dodgy headers we conceded that year. Javi Garcia, I believe, scored a nice wee flick on at the front post. And then suddenly it was like, hang on, this is really dangerous here, because they were just battering us for the past like 10-15 minutes. They were really coming at us. They had nothing to lose. They get one goal, that's them through on away goals. So we're like, right, it was really quite panicky, to be honest. And I think also the Benfica game, like in hindsight, out of the knockout games and on the road to Munich, like it's probably the one that gets the least discussed.
That one really do they, as much as like
nah, and
go to it next.
Nah, because I think it's just because how special the other games were. But you know, it was still part of the journey. It was still really important. But those 5 minutes or so after Benfica equalised on the night, I think I needed a defibrillator or something. Like I was so panicky, and they had a couple of corners, and it was a couple of dangerous attacks, and I was thinking, oh my god, this is how we're going to go out, isn't it? Then Raul Meireles stepped up and scored an absolute screamer, picked the ball up at the edge of his own box, ran the length of the pitch and blasted a thunder bastard into the top corner. It was probably one of the best goals of that run. Probably, actually, I can say it might have been the best, unless I'm missing an obvious one. But it was a really good goal, and it was like in the semi-finals. He scored that goal in injury time, and yeah, it was just like semi-finals. Barca. It was just all eyes on Barca.
It was written in the stars, this one. Dia, I'm going to come to you right now. See when they got Barca. I was always under the impression with this run, I was right, they've got past Napoli, okay, that was great. All right, they've got past Benfica, right, okay, Barca will beat them now. Right, surely no, if Barca haven't beaten them now, right, surely Bayern will beat them. That's the way I was going through this run all the time with it. I mean, from an outsider looking in, were you the same?
Yeah, well, obviously, when you come up against a team of the calibre of Barcelona, you're naturally inclined to think that Chelsea are going to be up against it, and unquestionably, they were certainly up against it because, reigning European champions, and you've seen that, like, Barcelona, they specialised in dismantling like English teams in these big finals. So obviously, it happened to us in the final in 2006. And then obviously Chelsea in 2009 in the quarter-final, and then they beat Man United in the two finals in 2009 and 2011. So they had a really excellent record against English teams leading up to this point. So you would, and I have to say, when I was looking at it, I just thought, yeah, this will. I didn't think it was going to be comfortable for Barcelona, because I'd seen how spirited Chelsea had been in that Napoli performance, and how, even though it was a bit of a close run in towards the end against Benfica, I seen that, they'd held out. So I saw that this Chelsea team had a degree of steel, and they weren't going to be phased by the occasion. They weren't going to think, oh God, we're playing Barcelona, like backs to the wall kind of thing. I think this Chelsea team under Di Matteo, they had a lot of spirit, certainly, because people forget, like, not all, obviously the Champions League's the crown and glory of that season, but they also won the FA Cup. So it's not as if, like, this season they were going to kind of just let this season peter out. I thought they were going to give Barcelona a really good fight, and obviously that's the way it turned out, beating Barca 1-0 in the first leg at the Bridge. Obviously, that's not the one that gets discussed most frequently. No. It's the second leg at the Nou Camp, which I'm sure Cammy will be more than pleased to tell us all about.
Yeah, sorry, on mute again there. But yeah, I think obviously the first leg, it was, as you say, it's not the main kind of one that gets discussed, but I think it was first one was an excellent performance as well. I think it was maybe less sort of scrappy, if you like. There was still a lot that happened. Again, another Ashley Cole goal in clearance. I remember that first half, they just had so many chances. Iniesta, Fabregas, Messi, all came really close, and we just put in a really solid defensive shift. I just remember that game. I'd never been more scared in my life, but I was kind of thinking, I don't know if it's a good thing that the first leg's at the Bridge or whatever, but I just kind of thought they're going to batter us at the Camp Nou. Obviously, I felt at the time, and I'll keep my opinions about UEFA to myself, but we always kind of felt that they were going to give them the helping hand again, as you say, DL, as it did in 2009 in the semis. So yeah, it was just kind of felt so up against it, but we just kind of thought, right, we've only got. We need to go for it, kind of thing, and that we did, and tremendously so. So yeah, after taking a lot of Barca pressure in the first half, eventually we get a good wee breakaway, which I think was the game plan all along. Lampard takes the ball on the halfway line off of Messi, of all people, plays it through to Ramirez, who kind of, as he was really brilliant for that season, just lightning quick, burst through, and eventually cut the ball back to Drogba. Maybe not the cleanest finishes from the big man, but again, Didier Drogba, European Cup semi-final, it was almost a given at that point. Stepped up, scored the goal, and yep, doesn't matter how they go, and it was put us in 1-0 up at half time, and we're thinking, this is massive. This is a really important goal. This could keep us in the tie, especially given the what could kind of come our way at the Camp Nou. Second half came, another few good chances from them. I remember Puyol came really close. The last minute, Pedro hit the post. And Busquets missed an absolute sitter in injury time. There was just so many moments where you felt like Alexis Sanchez as well, like they were just going to score, and it was only going to take a second. It was just like a matter of when it was going to come. So yeah, the first half of the tie, the first leg was finished, and we're all like, "Oh my God, we need to hold on here. We can get through this. We can win this game." Doesn't see us really get like scoring a lot in the Camp Nou. I thought we'll maybe hopefully get a cheeky wee away goal, but I wasn't very confident, to be honest, just bearing in mind how good they were. They'd be thirsty for revenge after that first game. They were a talent in that squad, and in my opinion, like that 2010-11 team was the best team of all time. Certainly the best team that I've ever seen, which I appreciate. I've probably not seen that many brilliant teams throughout the history of football, but that 2011 Barca team was special.
They were unbelievable.
That's it. So I was just like, in fact, they didn't win the league that season either. Madrid beat them to it under Mourinho, and you just kind of felt like, wow, they are going to want to win this European Cup and become the first team to retain it as well, because that had never been done at that point. And it was quite talked about, theme at the time, how no one's actually retained it. As the Champions League, as you know what I mean. So obviously it's been retained by many teams as a European Cup, but since it became the Champions League, if you like, it's never been retained at that point until Madrid done it. They won it 3 times in a row, obviously, but the second leg came about, and they had a really weird setup, Barcelona. And I'm going to get the lineup up again here, because I've came off my phone just to chat through those last couple of games. But it was a weird setup they had. I think they actually played 3 at the back. It's hard to kind of pinpoint the exact way to set up. They started with 3 at the back. They had Puyol, Piqué, and Mascherano. Then they had sort of 4 central midfielders, and Busquets, Iniesta, Fabregas, and Xavi. And then it was like a front 3 of Cuenca, Messi, and Sanchez. So it was like, they were really, I think they were just planning just to completely go for it, just to try and blitz us away, when Piqué got subbed off really early on. Because he had a collision with Victor Valdez, keeper, and he couldn't continue. And then this is the point I want to make. They then subbed on Dani Alves for him, sort of tweaked the system a wee bit. But that's just the difference in quality at the time. The fact that they could just casually bring on Dani Alves, who you could argue has probably been, to be honest, one of the best right backs in the history of football, certainly over the past 20 years or so.
He was. He's still a decent player even to this day. Do you know what I mean?
He is, and that's it. It's just been one of these players that have always been sort of there, then and thereabouts, and the fact they brought him on, and you look at the different quality for us. We had an early injury as well. Gary Cahill came off. Who do we have to sub on? Jose Bosingwa, who, to be honest, there's a slight gulping quality there. And that was a big blow at the time, because Cahill just came from also Bolton that season in January. 1 minute in a relegation battle, then actually playing in front of 98,000 fans in the Camp Nou in the European Cup semi-final. Bit of a weird season for him, I'd imagine. But yeah, it was quite unfortunate that he pulled his hamstring really early on in that game. And the thing was that other centre back, David Luiz, was injured against Tottenham in the FA Cup semi-final. So we'd lost 2 of our kind of 3 centre backs. And then they went 1-0 up. It was just a case of when it was going to come. And that's when Cahill went off. Ivanovic slotted in at centre back next to Terry, and then Bosingwa went out to right back. And we kind of had a decent structure at that point. We still kind of looked like we were going to go for it. We looked like we might nick something. It was quite promising. The way we kind of started the game, and then eventually they went. Despite having a lot of chances as we expected, they eventually went 1-0 up. It was a dodgy goal from Busquets. I say dodgy, I mean from our perspective defensively, we kind of just got carved open and we're just all over the place, and they were queuing up. Busquets tapped it in. After that, we're just kind of like, oh fuck, it's finally happened, because that had been about 125 minutes of football where we just kept them out so well. They finally broke through. A couple of minutes later, John Terry has the moment of madness, and probably the biggest regret of his own career. Well, a couple of nominees for that, I guess, but yeah, he basically went and needed Alexis Sanchez in the back. What inspired that, I don't know, but the line's been caught him doing it, and yeah, it was he got sent off as a result. At that point, we've lost our main leader, our captain, our legend. We don't have anyone to bring on to replace him. That could fill in that gap. So at this point, the way we set up, we'd lost our 2 centre backs, which I think people forget we lost Cahill as well. To be honest, I don't think that's something that's really
a
discussed
lot
enough.
of people probably won't remember that, the fact that Chelsea played the rest of that game with no real recognised centre halves.
Nope, exactly. So we played. It was basically like Ivanovic playing centre half. Basinga slotted in there. Ramirez sort of went out to right back almost, and then Cole stuck in at left back. And that's the most. In recent times, that's probably the most makeshift Chelsea defence you could ever possibly hope to imagine. And it gave me heart failure, because at this point I'm just kind of thinking, oh my God, we are playing against the best team of all time here, the best player of all time. This could get ugly, and ugly quickly.
Barca 7 past teams in this competition, like before, like it was like one of those ones you were like thinking like, oh my God.
Exactly. I was absolutely shit myself at this point, and then I watched it with my brother Robbie, and we were just like, he almost kind of looked at me just to say like, told you kind of thing, like
welcome to being a Chelsea fan.
Yeah, it was basically just saying why he didn't want to get his hopes up, and we're just like, right. Then 5 minutes or so later, Iniesta goes and scores to make it 2-0. He kind of again broke through the defence. Nice real finish from Iniesta, and it was just like, right, this is it. This is really going to be about 5 or 6 here, and it was something. Chelsea were down those kind of years before that were always kind of like known to have a really solid kind of defence, like you not really concede that many goals. So I'd never actually seen us being like properly like battered. Like I think the most goals I'd seen us concede at this point have been like 3 goals, like over a 3-goal deficit, I feel like. And I just kind of thought, I'm going to see us lose about 6-7-0 here. I was just so worried. And then I think at this point all the players kind of knew, like you just kind of saw the looks on their faces. Like we're going to go at half time 2-0 down. Let's just not concede any more before the break, and then second half we'll just try and keep the score down. That's the way it kind of was. That's the way it felt for the players, and that's the way it felt for me and Robbie as Chelsea fans. And I'm sure any other Chelsea fan would agree with me there. But then the most kind of unexpected turn of events. We just kind of we're in a rare spell of possession. Ball comes through to Ramirez, gives a ball into Lampard, who's in a fairly advanced position. Ramirez kind of carries through his run, and then Lampard plays a lovely, really nice weighted ball through, and Ramirez scores a chip. And I've just kind of realised I said Morelos' goal was probably the best of that run. I totally Ramirez didn't even come into my mind.
The Ramirez goal, an absolute peach. It was just a lovely, just everything about it was just so nice.
It was so cool. Like it just looked like it was the coolest guy in the stadium, to be honest. Like to do that in front of 98,000 fans in the European Cup semi-final, against Victor Valdez, who at the time was one of the best keepers in the world. It was just like, and then you're like, hang on, that's an away goal. That's it. As it stands, we are going through. Which is like, at this point, we weren't really figuring out possibilities or ways we could go through. It was more like how much we can reduce the score. And we're kind of thinking, hang on, and then obviously that half time came, and we're like, by the way, like, oh my God, this is something. We actually have a glimmer of hope here. And if that didn't happen, then it wouldn't have happened. That goal before half time, just to give everyone that kind of lift. Then I don't know what Di Matteo said to them at half time. Apparently, JT made a massive apology, and I don't know, but something happened in that dressing room at half time. We're like, right, this is not done.
Probably tuck in your shirts, boys, and get ready to get battered for
the
next night.
Exactly, mate. Exactly, and that was it. The second half was just like me and Robbie still say, like that was the longest game of football we have ever watched. That second half alone took about 3 weeks to finish. I'm convinced. I've watched the game a couple of times since, and I'm just like, oh my God, how did I survive? How did I survive this? Like the amount of attacks they had, the amount of close chances. Oh my! And let's not forget, Messi missed a penalty. Like
he did, I know.
Like it's like when and that was quite early on in the second half as well. Like it was when we were kind of beginning to settle down a bit. We were kind of preparing for the full Barca blitz that was about to come, and then Cesc Fabregas, we dived under a tackle from Drogba, and that was kind of the other side of Drogba's game. He was a bit clumsy at times. I still think it was a very soft penalty. It looked like a foul at the start, but you kind of see Fabregas did dive, which he had a tendency to do, the wee Arsenal cunt. Obviously, that changes in a couple of years, but yeah.
Neil, I don't think you agree with that statement, do you?
Well, I mean, I'm not really going to put much of a fight against it now, to be fair, all these years down the line, but...
in hindsight, I'll cut him a bit of slack, but at the time I was just I don't think I could have sworn at Fabregas enough as an 11-year-old. But yeah, Messi sets up the penalty. You're just kind of thinking, it's done. That's it. The hope's gone. And then he hits the bar. I was in shock when that happened. I just don't understand how he missed it. And that's the thing. There isn't really any science to it. It's just like, holy fuck, this is special. Like, what is going on here? And then after that, yeah, it was the next half an hour. So according to the referee, it was half an hour. I believe it was about, as I say, about 3 weeks to a month. But yeah, they just came at us attack after attack. Messi hit the post. Messi at this point still hadn't scored against Chelsea as well. So many good chances. At this point, we had basically a back six. So it was, we had Morelos, Mikel and Lampard sitting in front of a back line of 6 players, one of which being Didier Drogba, who was playing fullback. Like it was just a solid back six, and then a free formation that night after Terry sent off 6-3. Like it was just bizarre. The amount of pressing those 3 midfielders done that night was just phenomenal. And then in between, then like there was a few other moments that aren't really discussed. Like, so obviously, we knew if we get through, Terry's out the final, but there was 3 more players. Like Ramirez got booked, Ivanovic got booked, and Morelos got booked, and they were 3 players. They were probably 3 of our best players that night. Don't get me wrong, they were all absolutely outstanding for the full duration of the game. But like to lose those 3 players, we're kind of thinking, well, hang on, what's the point going into a final without them 3 and Terry? And obviously Cahill and David Luiz with their injuries. It's like the final could be a recipe for disaster as well, but I'm thinking we'll get to that when we come to it. So yeah, we played this solid line, and Barca just couldn't get through it. When they did, Pete was there, big check, to save the day basically, and it was just pretty miraculous, to be honest. And obviously we're thinking, like, we're going to see it out, we're going to win 2-1. At this point, I feel like I'm portraying Robbie as the most negative Chelsea fan in the world, but I can just tell he's just looking at his face. He's just sitting there thinking, yeah, they're going to score. It's going to be Iniesta all over again. They're going to score in the last minute, and it's just going to be soul destroying because they get 1 goal, they go through. But when he's looking at him, I'm just thinking he's just waiting for this to happen, and I was going to become convinced that it was going to come eventually. And obviously, what happens next? Ashley Cole punts the ball at the pitch. Torres just happens to be sitting up there.
I just remember the commentator going, "Oh, they're in here! They're in here!" And I was like, "What's going on?" Like,
I know. I remember those exact words.
He's running so far up the park.
He tried to go on a wee dribble like about a minute before that, and he just kind of ended up floating up there. He ended up on his arse, and he was just still up the pitch from it. And it was like that moment you just kind of saw, no one realised he was up there, and then suddenly we realised because he was in his own half, he was onside. Because my initial thought was like, he's off. Then I realised, no, he's in his own half, he's not. And then I was like, he's through and goal. But at this point, I was just like, oh no, it's Fernando Torres. Like, you know, the guy has absolutely no confidence, as if he's going to finish this on this stage. And we're like, that way, me and Robbie just grab each other for dear life. We're like, oh my God, is he going to do it? Is he going to do it? And then we thought he should have just. I remember thinking he just hit it from a bit further out, try and slot it past him, don't take it around him. I also took it around him. I thought he'd made an arse. I thought Valdez had grabbed it at first. I was ready to scream at him, but he took it around him and slotted it in. And oh my God, that moment, the relief, the excitement, how it's just, I was so proud. Like, you know, just to feel like really disappointed in like JT that night, and just for the 10 players that were out there, and well, 10 players plus the subs that came on, Torres being one of them, to put in the shift that they did. You know, it was just like probably one of the best team performances I've ever seen. And the way I see football, you know, like people will look at that and say that was anti-football, ugly performance, etc. But you can't play bad. Like, there's 2 sides to a football pitch, and the way we defended that night was fucking miraculous, and that's putting it lightly. Like it just made me so proud. And yeah, it's just nothing else you can say about it. Like, to take that amount of pressure from the players of that quality, Xavi, Iniesta, Messi, Sanchez, Fabregas, Pedro, you know, and to do it to see them out that convincingly. Well, not convincingly maybe isn't the word, but you know what I mean. To get through it basically. So yeah, that was the Barca game, and you know the biggest sigh of relief ever soon followed that.
Yeah, and you're now moving on to Munich. So that's all for part one of this epic podcast of the Southy and DL show. Cammy, how have you thought part one's went so far?
Thoroughly enjoyed it, to be honest. You know, as I say, I've never get sick of talking about that run, and also still get to the main event. But yeah, it's just so many special moments to look back on, and it's just even just thinking about it just now. I'm not even watching the games, obviously, but it just makes me so like it's just giving me a feeling like no other, to be honest. Just discussing it. But yeah, no, really looking forward to coming back on tomorrow to do part two and talk about the final in Munich itself.
And,
but yeah, it's been great.
That's when we'll see you again tomorrow. So thanks very much, Cammy. Thanks very much, DL. So make sure to like, share, subscribe, and be sure to be tuned in tomorrow for part two where we talk all about that final in Munich. Thanks very much for watching. Goodbye.